Good morning. My name is Karen Seymour-Ells, and I serve as a trustee here at the DuPage Unitarian Universalist Church. I want to welcome everyone to our open and inclusive virtual community this morning. As Unitarian Universalists, we hold that there are many spiritual paths to truth and meaning, and we pledge to support one another as we explore these paths and to support one another through the challenging days that lay ahead. We are so glad you were able to find us this morning on our live stream and join us for our service. As you are likely aware, all church services and necessary meetings will be held virtually until further notice. It is our hope to reinstate live services as soon as the CDC and local authorities tell us it is safe to do so. We are committed to doing our best to navigate these challenging times with you and look forward to sharing actual space with you all again soon. Please check the church website at dupageUUchurch.org for updates. If you search under DuPage UU Church on Facebook, you will find a number of ways to be in community with us as well. And a little note from Stewardship. Could you please take or return their call? We'd like to know that you are okay and that we have the right contact information for you. Even if you don't know how you are going to be able to support the church over the year ahead, we'd still like to know how you're doing.
Thank you, Vera. Good morning. As we gather virtually to celebrate the season of birth and rebirth, we hear the heartbeat of Mother Earth. With spring comes the blossoming of plants and emerging patterns of life. We hear the heartbeat of Mother Earth. In this time of growth and reflection, let us draw closer to nature and each other. We hear the heartbeat of Mother Earth. In the continuing circle of life, giving thanks, we hear the heartbeat of Mother Earth. Those words were by Ada Amakraba, and it is in honor of Earth Day that we light our flaming chalice this morning. Our opening hymn is number 163 for the Earth Forever Turning. If you are at home, I still invite you to rise in body or in spirit.
Good morning. I'm Camasta from the Green Sanctuary Committee. We are glad to celebrate Earth Day, one of our favorite holidays, with you all. I talked with my nature-loving friends and received some good suggestions for readings today. Ruth Schoenfeld, Sue Gately, and Pat Clancy helped. Why I Wake Early by Mary Oliver. Hello, sun in my face. Hello, you who make the morning and spread it over the fields and into the faces of the tulips, and the nodding morning glories, and into the windows of even the miserable and crotchety. Best preacher there ever was, dear star. That just happens to be where you are in the universe, to keep us from ever darkness, to ease us with warm touching, to hold us in the great hands of light. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Watch now how I start the day. In happiness, in kindness. Ruth says this next reading is a very popular work. So if you are a Mary Oliver aficionado, you'll know this one. Wild Geese. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about your despair, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over, announcing your place in the family of things.
It is time to gather, and today I would like to talk about a program that our kids are doing in conjunction with the Green Sanctuary Committee. Now, you may have seen the ads going out in the newsletter or in the weekly updates for the religious education to save your bottle caps. So with this program that the kids were just starting to initiate when we started the social distancing, so you haven't really seen it at church. But what we want to do is save the bottle caps. So the kids involved are the grade school kids in Spark social groups and the middle school fire social groups. Now in these groups, even though it is about having fun and socializing, they also want to do a social project for the church. Now you might remember back at Christmas time, they created gift packages for a number of the elders in the church. So this is another project that they're working on. This one will probably take a lot longer than the gift bags. But the idea of the project is that we collect all these bottle caps, and after we have a certain amount of them, we trade them in for utility. It could be benches for the outside, or tables, or step stools, or planters, or decorations. What we came up with is that we want to get enough bottle caps that we can trade them in for a picnic table that has an ADA spot for it so that people can roll up on a wheelchair. It'd be an 8-foot picnic table that we'd put out on our new patio that we created last year, putting that concrete slab outside the back door in Creeves Hall. So with this program, we would collect these bottle caps. What we'd like you to do is when you're at home and you finish a pop bottle, twist off the cap, set it aside, and then put the bottle in your recycling bins. But it's not just pop bottles or water bottles. It's the caps to ketchup bottles, and I'll get more into that a little bit later. So what the kids will do is, as these bottle caps are collected, when the kids get together, they'll set aside some time to go through all the caps that were submitted and make sure that they are the right ones. And they'll sort through them. And then they will take the ones that they're keeping and they will put them into large garbage bags, and then they will weigh the bags. And then we'll keep a count on what the weight is, and once we reach our goal, which is over 550 pounds, then at that point we will order the table and we will pack up all those bottle caps. And this is a company down in Indiana, in Evansville, Indiana. They're called Green Tree Plastics. We will take the bottle caps down to them. They will go through, make sure they're all the right ones, weigh them, and then once we have the right amount, or they confirm that we have the right amount, then they will give us the picnic table. And then we'll haul it back and put it on the patio for everybody to use. So you might be wondering, why bottle caps? These are a particular type of plastic. And this company, they're not a recycling company. They are a plastic building company. So they only use a certain type of plastic. So the types of plastics that they can use are medicine bottle caps, drink bottle caps, milk jug, creamer caps, ketchup caps, detergent caps, spout caps like what you find on mustard bottles, hairspray caps, spray paint caps, toothpaste caps, ointment tube caps, any type of the screw-on caps, as long as they don't have metal in them. And if they have that little plastic sleeve inside, that's fine. That's the right type of plastic. But they also take lids. So like the lids to your cottage cheese container or a Cool Whip container. or a Pringles can, a mayonnaise jar lid, coffee can lids, a peanut butter jar lid, butter lids, ice cream bucket lids, but they do need to be under 8 inches. So the things that they don't accept is anything that has any type of metal in it. No food containers. So even though they'll use the lid on the yogurt container, they will not use the container itself. No plastic lids that have springs in them or ball bearings. Those will gum up the system. So what they do when they get this is that they put this into a big grinder and they grind up all these caps into what you see here, all these shreds of plastic. And then what they do is that they funnel all these into extruder. And this extruder has a long drive shaft with screws on it. And the screws, as you can see, they narrow down. The shaft gets bigger and it narrows down, and it's causing friction. And it's the friction that melts the plastic. They do not apply heat to it because heat will only affect that which is touching the heating element, because plastic is an insulator. So none of the plastic inside of the area being heated would actually get that heat from the elements. So they're using pure friction to melt this plastic down into a liquid form. So as it's being pushed along that drive shaft, it's squeezing down and it's getting more and more friction and it's starting to melt. And then when it all comes out the end, then it is put into a mold, whether it's a bench or a table, or it could be a flower pot or some type of a figurine. What we are aiming for is, of course, the picnic table. So we hope that you will join along with the kids in this project and save your bottle caps. When we do come back together as a community, there are containers in the building that are labeled for bottle caps only, and you can place all your bottle caps into there, and the next time that the kids get together for Fire and Spark, they're going to go through, sort through all these caps, and they're going to weigh them, and then we're going to see how much closer, or see how close we are. This will probably take through the next year to get to the weight that we want. So the nice thing about this is that after we get the picnic table, the project doesn't have to end there. That we can keep collecting bottle caps, and we can choose other items that we want to get. We can do park benches that we can put in the backyard to replace the wooden benches that tend to rot over time. With these being plastic, they don't rot. So we would like to thank you in advance for saving your bottle caps, and we look forward to the day when we get back together and you come in with armloads full of bottle caps.
Communion Circle by Mark Bellatini, UU minister from Columbus, Ohio. The Earth, one planet, round, global, so that when you trace its shape with your finger, you end up where you started. It's one. It's whole. All the dotted lines we draw on our maps of this globe are just that, dotted lines. They smear easily. Oceans can be crossed. Even the desert can be crossed. The grain that grows on one side of the border tastes just as good as the grain on the other side. Moreover, bread made from rice is just as nourishing to the body and spirit as bread made from corn or spelt or teff or wheat or barley. There is no superior land, no chosen site, no divine destiny falling on any one nation who draws those dotted lines just so. There is only one earth we all share, we, the living, with all else that lives and does not live. Everything for good or ill is part of the shared whole. Sky, earth, song, words, and now this silence.
Today, in so many ways, we consider how all life is interconnected, interdependent, woven as a web that is strong together. And so it is with our spiritual community in the DuPage River Valley. We are connected to each other, we care for each other, and we hold on and support each other, whether it be in times of great joy, times of great sorrow, and even on just regular, everyday days. This has been made more difficult by the coronavirus pandemic, causing us to become somewhat isolated in our own homes. And yet, our church community is still here caring for you, for all of us. We understand that you may be at home holding on to joys and concerns you wish you could share with others here. We cannot do that right now, but let us find a way to create space for our joys and sorrows, our cares and concerns. Being a caring community, we celebrate the joys and share the sorrows, whether we've told others about them or hold on to them in silence. We do so that our friends do not carry these alone. You're now invited into a moment of silence and meditation as we hold any joys and sorrows in our community in our hearts and minds. Thank you. Blessed be. Not long ago, this congregation began its annual pledge campaign. We called it our Stewardship Promise program this year. And every Sunday we take an offering. All of this happens in concert, and one can be forgiven if one thinks, are we just all about the money? No, we're not just all about the money. Last week, I shared a number that was a conflation of a couple things. I got confused and I said something incorrect. For that, I apologize. However, what is still true is the sentiment. We need you just as you need us. We need each other. We are a beloved community in which we keep our doors open and welcome in those seeking shelter from a hurting world. Right now, that means our virtual doors in this online space. And I know no one can come through our physical doors right now, but those doors will be waiting to greet you when you return after the pandemic. Why? Because we are a beloved community in so many ways. We are raising up children with our values of compassion, peace, and justice. We speak truth to power when we see injustice happening in our cities, state, and nation. We are a beloved community that cares for each other in good times and sad. When we ask for an offering, this is what we are asking you to support, our beloved community. If you're joining us for the first time, we invite you to let our virtual offering plate pass you by because you're our honored guest. And if you've made this your spiritual home and this community is beloved to you, we thank you for your ongoing generosity. This morning's offering will now be received.
The Peace of Wild Things by Wendell Berry. When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound, in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water, and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things, who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world and am free.
Today we are commemorating Earth Day, which began in 1970 as an International Day of Ecological Awareness, coinciding with the vernal or spring equinox. First proposed by peace and environmental activist John McConnell, his hope was this would be a global holiday to help people become more aware of our impact on the earth and to promote the preservation of this home of ours. Recognizing and acknowledging our impact on the earth seems pretty important to me. Plastics have begun to fill our oceans and streams. Conspicuous consumption results in landfills full of things that do not degrade. Whole species of animals and plants have become endangered or extinct due to human interference in their habitats. Perhaps it seems like the height of hubris for humanity to think that we have the right to do whatever we want to the world. But then we are reminded of words written long ago that come down to us today that have profoundly affected much of Western culture. I imagine that you have heard these words before. And God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth." Genesis 1:26, as written in the King James Version. I have long felt that this concept of dominion over the earth is not particularly helpful when we look at what we have done with that so-called dominion. Being the dominant species on the planet, we have the power to do good or ill, which is why I have so often lifted up our seventh Unitarian Universalist principle. You've heard it before, but just by way of reminder, the principle states that we affirm and promote respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. A previous iteration of the seventh principle explicitly connected it to ecology, and many folks still see it that way. I, however, see it as including ecology, but also much more than that. This metaphor of an interdependent web allows philosophical breadth and theological depth that speaks to the fact that we are integral parts of a greater whole. We may see that greater wholeness as being the earth, or life, or God, or the community we live in, or one's family, or so many other great things. This metaphor of an interdependent web also leaves room for accepting what is without having to know what it is. We are part of something greater than ourselves, as I have said many times, because life makes little sense otherwise. When one thinks of the meaning of life, it seems to me that there is no meaning if we each think of ourselves as a unitary, solitary, completely independent being, not part of a larger fabric of life. So we look beyond ourselves, and one thing we see when we bother to look is the grand and awesome totality that is nature. But let's not stop there. It seems to me that humanity's place in the world consists of more than just standing out in nature, feeling awe. Some speak of our deep relationship with our world, in fact, a direct relationship to our world, and this further reinforces the concept of interdependency. In the book A Chosen Faith, John Behrens wrote, "The word human and humane both come from the same Latin root, humus, the earth that bears us, to which we all return and on which we are asked to walk together in humility during the time that is ours." Many cultures around the world have stories about us as the children of the earth. Even the Hebrew Bible tells us that man was molded from the dust of the earth, and then God breathed the breath of life into man, and he lived. While that story seems unlikely to be literally true, I think it contains a kernel of metaphorical truth in that it was describing our relationship with all other things, using language that made sense to the people who articulated that story in their time and context many thousands of years ago. In many cultures, there may be found recurring metaphors of humanity being born of the earth upon which we live, move, and breathe, a relationship that indicates a greater family of all life. Being interdependent beings, part of the world on which we live, stewardship of the earth seems to me to be a better approach than the older idea of our dominion over the earth. We have an interdependent relationship with the world around us, and that really brings home the point that we have a responsibility to be good stewards of the earth. Sometimes it's a little easier for one to imagine having a part in that stewardship when we look at something close to home and not quite so big as to say we're each responsible for being stewards of the whole world. That seems to be a little too much to ask of each of us. But if we look at this more locally, I think the idea becomes less overwhelming. So what does it mean to be a steward? Is it enough to recycle our garbage? A few years ago, many people traveled to Standing Rock to protest oil pipelines across many hundreds of miles. When I was serving on the East Coast, many there were concerned about fracking, the mining of natural gas in a way that endangered water supplies. Today, you have also been hearing from our Green Sanctuary Committee about our connection to the earth. Concern for the natural world has long been a part of the UU tradition. I think back to Ralph Waldo Emerson, who wrote a book entitled Nature, and his protege, Henry David Thoreau, famous for living close to nature at Walden Pond. I'd like to share a reading from Thoreau's work, Out of Doors. And he said, "In summer, we live out of doors and have only impulses and feelings which are all for action, and we must wait commonly for the stillness and longer nights of autumn and winter before any thought will subside. We are sensible that behind the rustling leaves and the stacks of grain and the bare clusters of grape, there is a field of a wholly new life which no man has lived, that even this earth has need for more mysterious and nobler inhabitants than men and women. In the hues of October sunsets, we see the portals to other mansions than those we occupy, not far off geographically. There is a place beyond that flaming hill, from whence the stars their thin appearance shed, a place beyond all place where never ill nor impure thought was ever harbored. Sometimes a mortal feels in himself nature. Not his father, but his mother stirs within, and he becomes immortal with her immortality. From time to time, she claims kindredship with us, and some globule from her veins steals up into our own." The example Thoreau provided was more than the written word. In a time when such things seemed unusual, he chose to live a simple life, close to nature. At the time, his contemporaries thought Thoreau was a bit of a loon. When one is aware of the powerful proscription since biblical times about dominion over the earth, and a developing society that thought living life mostly indoors was proper, then Thoreau's views about stewardship and being out of doors more than in seemed a bit strange. Nowadays, many of us think he was really onto something. In the midst of all of this talk about the earth and how we do our part to protect it, I'm aware that it feels like the entire world has changed. The world hasn't experienced something like the coronavirus since, as I understand it, 1918 in the Spanish flu epidemic. So in the midst of taking care of the world, I also want to remind us to take care of each other. To be there for each other, even if it has to be from a distance. To stay connected with each other. To listen, to share, to be able to still be the friends and the family and the community that we know that we are. So today, I've spent the day talking about the earth and protecting it, but let's remember that we are part of that. We are all part of that, and let us also protect each other. And I hope that we can get through this pandemic soon. I don't know about you, but I'm ready for it to be over. In closing, I will leave you with these words from one who's been able to stand very far back, who has seen the earth from very far away. Much like the earth you see behind the pulpit, these were the words of the astronaut, Edgar Mitchell. Suddenly, from behind the rim of the moon, in long, slow motion moments of immense majesty, there emerges a sparkling blue and white jewel, a light, delicate sky blue sphere laced with slowly swirling veils of white, rising gradually like a small pearl in a thick sea of black mystery. It takes more than a moment to fully realize this is Earth, home. May it ever be so, and blessed be you all. Our closing hymn has got to be my favorite in both of our hymnals, I think. I invite you to rise in spirit and join us as we sing Blue Boat Home. It's number 1064 in the Teal hymnal. I want to say thanks to Becky Trombley-Freitag and Jim Wharton to help Vera and the rest of us with our music. In this time of pandemic and fear, take care of yourselves. Though we be far apart physically, we are together in our hearts. May we all stay healthy, and when it is safe again, let us gather here in celebration. Blessed be one and all.